Hey everybody, welcome back to another Mysidia post set review. My name is Alex Scott,
Hello, hello. I'm Travis Pfeifer.
and today we are going to be looking at the wind element for Opus 10. So we're gonna start off with Arc. So Arc is a hero. He is a 5 CP wind forward, 8,000 power, and he has an EX burst. When Arc enters the field, choose up to 3 job standard units or job warrior of light and activate them. He also has the damage 3 ability. When Arc enters the field, choose 1 job standard unit or job warrior of light, cost 3 or less in your break zone, play it onto the field. So just for your information, the first ability is the EX burst, and the second ability is not an EX burst. It would actually have to say EX burst at the start of the text for the second ability by damage 3 for it to also be part of that EX burst. So these abilities are pretty neat. They can make him a 2 cost 8k if you've set up properly, and that's pretty fair considering it requires specific deck building and setup to do. But it's a really neat card, especially on an EX burst, and damage 3 isn't too bad to hit, and playing something from the break zone as well is really nice, especially when you can play some backups that way as well, because at damage 3 you might not have fully ramped to 5 backups yet. So it seems like a pretty neat card, and it's always good to get more Warrior of Lights. It doesn't compete too much with the other Arc cards, so I also like that about it as well. I think that it's gonna, I mean, the 2 CP backup Arc is pretty important for standard units, but in terms of Warrior Lights, I think that this works fine with Warrior of Lights.
Yeah, I love the artwork on this card, and you bring up a really good point about it not competing with the other arcs so much. This definitely seems like a great build around. Standard unit decks can be really fun to play with. I've always enjoyed doing those, so this one could be a lot of fun, especially if you did the Warrior of Light from Opus 8, where a standard unit enters your field and it activates, I think, 2 backups to do some combination of this with that. And I remember there was some match I saw at some Crystal Cup where a guy had like a standard unit deck and he had that Warrior of Light, and I think he literally played like 7 forwards on one turn because he just kept putting in little chump like Vikings and drawing cards and reactivating backups. It was so cool. So yeah, I think this card's really neat.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll see some people attempt to use it, and I would be kind of interested to see that if there's going to be some sort of hybrid standard unit Warrior of Light deck, because we did get that 7 CP Earth Legend as well.
That's a good point.
So there could be some very real synergy to work with there.
That's true. Also, love that it's an EX burst. I wanted to point that out too.
Yes, and also very cool art.
Yes.
Okay, so we're following this up with another hero card.
All right. This is what my friends at my locals refer to as Smelly Finger Vaughn, because he definitely looks like he's sniffing his fingers. So this is Vaughn. He is a, yeah, right? And there's an Opus 8 Zidane. He had the same thing where he was like smelling his fingers. So everyone always called, oh, do you have any copies of Smelly Finger Zidane? And I was like, in the game, I'm pretty sure he like flicks his nose a lot. So I think that's what they're going for, is he's doing like a nose flick, but it just catches him right as he's like, sniffing his finger. Anyway.
It's a weird pose.
Yeah. I digress. So 2 cost forward, 4,000 power, Sky Pirate, of course. And he has a very interesting ability. For each active character other than Vaughn you control, Vaughn gains 1,000 power. In pre-release, this guy was really good. People would kind of run a very mini Sky Pirates package with whatever they pulled from their wind and water. And just, you have 3 backups up and maybe another forward. Boom, that's another 4,000 right there. I remember the guy I was facing who did end up beating me with this package. He had Vaughn up to 10,000 pretty easily. Now, of course, kind of has the downside that as you dull your backups or if your other forwards swing in, Vaughn gets weaker. But this card almost has a hidden text of like, do things on your main phase too, because before main phase 1, while everything's active, you want to be swinging in with this guy. He can so easily get to high power. Whether he'll compete with the other Vaughns remains to be seen, but for his cost, like for 2 CP, he can get pretty beefy. So I like this card a lot, and like I said, it was a beast in pre-release.
Yeah, he also cleaned up at pre-release for a lot of people at my locals, and I also think that he might as well have the text Vaughn must attack each turn because like you're going to attack with him, and at 2 CP in a deck that is sure to be a little bit aggressive in the Sky Pirates deck, I think that he has a really good home. You're going to play a wide board with lots of active characters, and you're also going to be wanting to push damage, and he'll be able to do that, and you're not really thinking about blocking with him anyway. So that makes him work. I also think that you'll be able to run him and other Vaughns because we have a starter Vaughn for Sky Pirates that I'm not 100% convinced it's for the deck or not, but it has a special. But then we also have the 6 CP Vaughn, and we have a 4 that we're going to talk about soon, which is Kites, that makes it worth it for you to run more Vaughns, especially when they're 2 CP and they might not stick around forever. So it's easier to run this guy and kind of run more copies of Vaughns.
When I first saw this text, when it was spoiled before we actually got to play with it, I was kind of like, well, but then, once he swings in and everything gets dull, then you can kind of delete him pretty easily. But in practice, seeing people actually play it, I don't think you really care because it's just 2 CP.
Exactly,
so
yeah.
It's like, go ahead, blow a summon on him or waste one of your abilities.
Use your 3 CP removal on a
exactly.
2 CP forward. That's great. Good for us. Okay, so the next one is Moonsaganaki.
Moonsaganaki!
Exactly. So it's a 2 CP monster, and it has a lot of text here. Put Moonsaganaki into the break zone. Choose one forward you control. It cannot be chosen by your opponent's summons or abilities this turn. Damage 5. Put Moonsaganaki into the break zone. Activate all the forwards you control. They cannot be chosen by your opponent's summons or abilities this turn. So this is like a hex proof from Magic, and it's pretty cool. I think that it's an okay card. Wind already has Y'shtola, so they're not as worried about this, although this stops things that Y'shtola can't stop, like action abilities, to name a few. So I just don't know if it's worth a deck slot or not. It's certainly a really, really powerful card, but it just might be not worth it in that if you don't use it, if your opponent plays around it, then you've just put almost 4 CP into the bin for nothing because it's costing you to play it and it's a card itself. So you have to use it quickly for it to gain value, and your opponent can try to bait you to use something else. To give you an example of a similar card, we had Cleone, the water monster, and that one has to activate when your opponent casts a summon, but it draws you a card, and it's very important that it draws you a card, and the fact that this doesn't makes it pretty fair, I guess.
Interesting, because I was like totally sold and really high on this card, but after just listening to you just now, I'm like, did I overrate it a little? I also, what comes to mind, because I see this card a ton at my locals, shout out to Brandon, because you're always playing this card, is Layak, which is a 1-cost monster, similar to Cleone. It has to trigger when your opponent attacks, but it also, not only does it draw you a card, it activates all your characters, and that includes backups. That being said, I mean, I don't know, man. Like, I just see so much potential in this. You are right in that Wind has other ways kind of already to protect itself through Aerith, the backup Aerith with Planet Protector, or, as you mentioned, Y'shtola. So I honestly kind of see this as a Wind splash card, like maybe Wind and something else. And maybe if it was just the first ability, while solid, man, that damage 5 is just like... It sounds like a swing play. Maybe I'm building it up in my head more than it would be, with the idea like, I don't think so. All the forwards are coming back. You can't hit them with anything, and the opponent's like, oh, what have I done? But unlike Layak and Cleone, I do like that you can control when to pop it. So in a way, you can almost kind of psych your opponent out once it's on the field, because they know, well, shoot, he can protect it at any point. And am I going to do it? Am I going to do it? So I think the card... Everything on the card text-wise is great. I love the art. I love that its job is spook. For some reason, that's what I'm using. But thinking about it, I do think you're right in the sense that this will probably come down to deck space.
Yeah, exactly. I do think it's fine. And I think that, like, in a late game, when you're pushing for the game and your opponent has some great removal and this is on the board, it's going to win you the game. But for all those times that it doesn't, that's where it's going to be tough. Okay, so we've got another hero already in the set.
Speaking of Aerith and Planet Protector, this is Hero Aerith. 4 cost, 7k forward. I feel like all her forwards are 7k. Maybe it's just me. So she has 3 separate action abilities. First action ability is simply Dull Aerith. Choose up to 3 Category 7 characters other than Aerith. Activate them. Second ability, Dull Aerith and pay a win CP. Choose 1 forward you control. It cannot be chosen by your opponent's summons or abilities this turn. Third ability, you simply pay 2 win CP. No dulling required, so this can be used immediately. Choose 1 forward. During this turn, the next damage dealt to it is reduced by 2,000 instead. So this card is very interesting. It's almost like a weird amalgamation of the backup Aerith and the Opus 8 Aerith Legend we got, because that one has the ability that if it takes damage, it gets reduced by 2,000. So it's nice that one doesn't require her to be dull, so therefore you can use it immediately. I definitely think this card has a lot of potential. I don't know if it will see play over the Opus 8 Legend Aerith, because I believe that one, all of its effects are live as soon as it comes in, whereas obviously this one, for 2 of them, you need to wait a turn. However, man, if I ever got to use this in Title, like the idea that she can reactivate 3 other 7 characters every turn, that's really sweet. So that's exciting. Although in Constructed, if someone out there has a great deck idea, let me know. I have found it difficult to play Wind with the 7 package. Generally, you want to play Fire Earth. I find that to be more effective and consistent. So I definitely think this card has potential, but I was a bit higher on it when I first saw it as a spoiler, but as I'm looking over it now, I don't know. Yeah, like I feel like you'd probably still play the Opus 8 Legend one over this, or maybe one of the really good backup versions ever. What do you think?
I agree with you. The difference is all the CP cost. At 4 CP, it's just unlikely to see play, because it's a really big CP investment for a weaker forward that takes a turn to get online. If you really built around it, then it could snowball and gain you back more than enough value. But again, there's just all those times that it doesn't. So I'm so split on this card. I think I'm probably going to try it out, but I just don't think that I don't think it's going to be worth it. And also, the other Aerith is really good. I'm such a huge fan of the 3 CP Aerith. So
yeah, absolutely. Do you like that you get to see a little bit of the Final Fantasy Remake art? That's nice. Or screenshot, whatever it is.
Yeah, and you can see that there's people standing behind her. I think there was someone that commented online that was like, this is one of the ones where they should put the like generic background behind her.
Oh,
but
right.
I don't really mind it. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got Echo, which is a 3 CP wind backup job fairy. When Echo enters the field, you may search for 1 category Mobius forward and add it to your hand. This is long overdue to get a Mobius searcher, because some of the best cards are Mobius. Mobius has amazing artwork, so we often get heroes and legends with Mobius artwork. So this searches Fusoya, it searches Wall and Maya and all sorts of neat cards, but it also shares a name with one of the best win backups in the entire game, the 4 CP EX Burst Echo. So that's kind of a tricky part, but I feel like if you're running enough of a Mobius package, it might be worth to have this, but not if it's Fusoya, because now we can search that with Aldo, and which is a 4 CP backup, and you want to run 4 CP backups when you're playing Fusoya. So yeah, it's just a great utility backup and kind of a unfortunate name clash, but overall I think it's fine.
You said it all. The only thing I'll add is that I really adore this artwork. She's kind of an annoying character in Mobius, but like this makes her look very playful and like kind of charming. So really good job on the artwork for this one.
Big time. Okay, so we previously alluded to this guy, and why don't you tell us who it is?
This is Kites, not the Ben Franklin version. You would fly in the sky to harness electricity. This is actually a job sky
reference,
pirate. I just came up with that. So this is a 1 cost forward, 3,000 power job sky pirate. When a card named Vaughn enters your field, you may pay 2 wind CP. When you do so, play Kites onto the field. This effect will trigger only if Kites is in the break zone. Second effect, put Kites into the break zone. Choose 1 job sky pirate. It gains 3,000 power until the end of the turn. So I don't know what to feel about this one. It's 1 CP, so So that's nothing to complain about. It's as cheap as it gets, other than technically 0. And free K isn't terrible for something that's 1 CP. And it's neat that it has this kind of recursion loop where you can, when he's in the break zone, Vaughn comes in, you pay 2, boom, you get a free Sky Pirate, and then at any point you can sack him to protect when your Sky Pirates, give him an extra 3,000. So he definitely fits the Sky Pirate archetype. And because he's so cheap, I don't think there's any disadvantage to him. I guess the only part I wonder, and would only really find this out through testing, is like, how often can you actually trigger this loop? Because the only way to get him back on is a Vaughn has to enter the field. So I don't know, like how many Vaughns are not only running, but they're constantly coming into the field so you can trigger this over and over again. But maybe it's meant to be more that niche little play as opposed to like something the deck actually is built around. So I guess in theory, the threat of a Kites... But because the way it works, you could theoretically put him onto the field and then instantly break him again for his trigger. So that is kind of neat. What do you think?
I think that he's pretty cool. So we already saw this effect with Ghost, but Ghost was a little more easily attainable because it was any Final Fantasy VI forward, whereas this is only card name Vaughn. So I'm only running 4 Vaughns in my Sky Pirates list that I'm testing right now, but this is also a lot more playable than Ghost is because he has other abilities, and he also triggers your Sky Pirate. Like, you need to have Sky Pirates on the board in order to do Sky Pirate things. So that's all like a nice plus over Ghost. And he's also just like, it's just nice to be able to flood the board easier in that deck that I think is a little more aggressive than Final Fantasy VI can be sometimes, although that can also be a pretty aggressive deck. I love that his boost is really relevant, again, for a deck that wants to push through in the late game and get some damage in. And I also have been thinking that Sky Pirates might be a deck that would benefit from Shemazai or the monster that makes it so...
Spicillion.
Yes, Spicillion, that make it so like you can only block the same cost forward as your forward. I was thinking if they had that monster, then 2 CP Vaughn and Kites and other Sky Pirates would be able to sneak through. Although I don't know, I haven't tested that yet. So, but this would obviously work with that. So I think it's fine. It's a Sky Pirate card for Sky Pirate deck, and it does what it's supposed to do. So yeah, if Sky Pirates are good, it's good.
Right. Good call.
I do think you only run 1. Like, what do you think about that?
You wouldn't run multiple? Yeah, I guess, yeah, you're right, because especially since he can recur himself from the break zone,
you only
unless they have incredible break zone hate, or he goes into damage, you're going to get his effect.
You only want to have 1 ever in the break zone, so...
Right, that makes sense.
And you can, if you're running the Searcher Pinello, you can play him or discard him for CP, or like you can get him in there if you want to set it up. But okay, so moving on, we have Ranger. Ranger is a standard unit, 4 CP backup. Put Ranger into the break zone and a doll symbol as well, and choose 1 backup of cost 3 or more and break it. I was really disappointed when I saw this card because I just kind of thought that's supposed to be Earth thing. Like, Wind was always 3 CP or less, and Earth was 3 CP and more. And I thought, like, well, Wind just gets to do so many things that other elements do. But I can understand from a design perspective that they just wanted you to have options to break backups that could be an issue, especially some of these new Doga and Une. If they shut down certain elements, then maybe you need an option for that. And Wind already does have Alexander to do that, so it's also just way too expensive and it's not good. So that doesn't really matter anyway, that it takes Earth's Thunder, because I don't think it's going to see any play. One fun note is that I think this is actually one of the better FF11 arts, because it's just really colorful and it's kind of a cool pose. And I have it in foil, and it actually looks really, really neat in foil.
Nice.
In general, they've been doing more selective foiling in like certain parts of the card, so not the whole thing is just blanket foiled. It's like they've been doing more selective foiling in the set, and I think that a lot of the foils look really good.
Oh, nice. Yeah, for being screenshot art, I like this one a lot. I hear you on the Wind thing, man. Sometimes it feels like they just give Wind access to everything as opposed to keeping it in its own element. So I was thinking of the backup Ninja. which does something similar, although I believe that one's back up to 3 or less.
Yes, and this is 3 more.
But him, you not only dull and put him in the break zone, just like this card, you have to pay 2 wind, but that card's much cheaper. It's a 2 CP. Mm-hmm. So this one kind of struck me as a more, well, you pay the cost up front, but then the breaking cost is just the ranger, whereas like archer or ninja are like, well, you also then have to pay additional CP when you break them. So again, I believe mathematically it's still the same amount of CP regardless. So it's just kind of interesting. This one's more, well, this one you invest up front and then you can just break it later. But yeah, I agree with everything you said.
I think investing up front in FFTCG is just it's a lot worse than playing a 2 CP backup, because you have to then use that ability. And something like Devout, even Devout doesn't see that much play anymore, but that worked because you would use Devout at some point for sure. But if you ever play Earth, I play so much Earth, and you run Hecaton Kier, the 3 CP one, you don't always use it every match, because oftentimes everybody has their 3 CP or higher backups or searchers and 4 CP searchers, and they pay less for those than you're going to pay for your Hecaton, so it's a bad trade unless you're locking them out of a color or something. So unless you're running up against decks that play things like 5 CP Yuna, then you don't really need that extra backup breaking power. So, okay, well, let's move on to a kind of interesting standard unit card.
Excellent. This is Thief. He is a forward standard unit, 4 cost, 7k. When a card is put from your opponent's deck into the break zone, Thief gains 2,000 power until the end of the turn. And as I was opening my boxes and my girlfriend read this, she was like, okay, so what does that do? I was like, read the second ability. Second ability, when Thief attacks, your opponent puts the top card of his or her deck into the break zone. I really like cards like this. I like cards that feed into themselves. I like cards that synergize with themselves so that, this card isn't like useless if you don't have Mill on top of it. He on his own can get his effect. So I really like that. So unless some kind of shenanigans happen on the stack, when the Thief attacks, he's basically always attacking for 9k, because he's always going to cause you to put something into the break zone, which then gives him that 2,000 power. So he's always a 9k attacker. He was pretty useful in pre-release. I liked him a lot. Again, you get that little mill effect. Plus, he's swinging in for bigger than he looks on paper, which is really nice. I like the artwork. I've always appreciated all the 3 artwork. And the fact that he's a standard unit means you can throw him in with Arc or any other standard unit machines and get value off of him that way. But yeah, design-wise, I really like this card. I doubt I'd ever see play in any kind of constructed, again, unless you're a very specific standard unit deck. But I like the card itself, and again, I like that the card feeds into itself and it relies on itself for its effect.
Yeah, and you know what? It would have been so much fun to play this with Riku. Just to see like how powerful you could get it, like with the reactivations, multiple mills, maybe like a mug special, and then you attack, and then it's like this huge forward. That would just be fun. But mill's not really a viable strategy either, especially without Riku. And when it was a viable strategy, you didn't even run other mill cards. You just ran Riku and activation. So it's just not going to see any play. Okay, so next we have Zidane. He is 3 CP forward, 5k job genome. Zidane doesn't receive any damage from summons or abilities. Zidane cannot be blocked by a forward of cost 4 or more. So this is was a fine limited card, and it is a CP increase on the Opus 1 Legend Zidane and it's slightly worse in a lot of scenarios. So I just don't think it's a constructed card, although that ability is very specific and helps out in one deck that I actually happened to play against the other day, which is your 6 CP Shantoto deck. So that's the Shantoto that takes damage and does the damage. Sorry, when it takes damage, it deals that damage to everybody, like on your side, on their side. So this Zidane doesn't take damage from that. So I played against someone that was running the new Kane that we're going to talk about in a little later. They were running this Zidane, and they kept pinging their own Shantoto, and then their forwards weren't dying, and then they were trying to swing through. And I thought that was just like the coolest little creation that they made.
That's clever. So you don't like? You think this one's worse than the Opus 1 Legends Zidane, which is, for the record, the exact same card except it's 2 CP but 3K power.
I think so, just because that one's untargetable.
What do you mean?
Isn't that one like can't be targeted by abilities?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe it's the exact. I'll even pull it up really quick.
I'm pretty sure it's not. This one doesn't receive damage, and that one can't be targeted by things or chosen by things. So, which is why it's kind of weird.
Because I have nothing to say about that, because you said it all well, but I thought they were exactly the same. Yeah, here we go. Opus 1 Legends Zidane is 2 cost, 3K, cannot be chosen by your opponent's summoner. Oh, okay, so he can't be chosen, whereas this one just doesn't take the damage.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so they actually are slightly different.
So and not being chosen is obviously pretty important, because other things won't be able to kill them, like a 5 CP Cecil or any sort of non-damage removal. But one of the key pieces of text on both cards is they cannot be blocked by cost 4 or more. And if you play this game in Opus 1, 2, and even in 3, people played all 4 CP forwards, and there was so much less of 3 CP forwards being in the game. Yeah. So these cards actually would tear up, and they'd be so good. But now everyone's running a lot of 3 costs and even some 2 costs, so their low power doesn't help them out there.
That's fair. Protects you against Valifor. Woo!
Yes, yeah, it's a good defensive against Valifor. Okay, next we have our first legend.
This guy is so cool. So I've never even played Brave Exvius, but the artwork and these Sworn 6 of the Palladia cards really make me want to. So Yoshitaka Amano artwork looks great. 3 CP forward, 7K. His name is Sid, FFBE in parentheses. When a forward of your opponent enters the field, deal it 2,000 damage. If the forward entered play without paying for its CP cost, deal it 9,000 damage instead. Coolest special ability in the game, called Spine Shatter Dive 0. It's 1 special, so you pay a Sid, Brevia. Then you pay 3 win CP, and you dull Sid. That's a lot, right? Check out what it does. Choose a forward. Deal it 10,000 damage and 1 point of damage to that forward's controller. What? So I got to see a friend use this card right after Opus 10 released, and it was so cool because it was such a back and forth match. And my buddy had 4 forwards on the field. He was on 6 damage. But he had a good field. He's like, all right, I can block. And my buddy drew the second copy of Sid, and he said, I'm sorry, man. Boom, Spine Shatter Dive. Just kill it. It's so cool. It's the only thing in the game currently that exists that your opponent can lose the game on their turn as far as taking damage. Not decking out, but they can actually hit that 7 point of damage on their turn, which is so neat. I think that special is amazing. Some people I've heard, it's too expensive. Well, yeah, it's expensive, but you're probably running this guy in a win deck anyway. I'm sorry, it's 10,000 damage. It removes a forward, pretty much guaranteed, and deals them a point of damage. Yeah, it should be expensive. I don't want a Sephiroth special. I'll Shadow Flare you for 1 ICP. I think that's great. And that's not even touching his first effect. This card completely craps all over Layla Viking or Phoenix targets, or basically anything that likes to be cheated into the field. Basically, unless, again, you have some kind of crazy protection shenanigans, that thing is dying as soon as it comes into the field. I would say the first part of his effect, the fact that a forward coming in takes 2,000, that's probably less relevant. Again, unless you have some way to combo off of that. But the fact that, you try to cheat anything in while he's on the field, he's just going, get it out of here. It's a great legend. It's great artwork. It's super unique. I like it a lot. I don't even care how useful it is. It's just a cool card.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you on everything you said. I've played this card quite a bit. I pulled 3 of them, so it made me think, okay, I'm just going to build with it, which is funny because I actually didn't rate the card crazy high. I thought that it was just a great tech choice and a silver bullet, but Wind had so much competition for space. But I'm absolutely loving it so far. I've specifically built around it in Wind Lightning to combo with the first effect.
Nice.
But just quickly touching on the special, you don't see specials used that often in FFTCG, especially doll specials. Often they try to push specials by not putting the doll on them. So I didn't rate the special highly until I started winning games with it and using it in practice, and it's incredible. It's absolutely worth it, because one of the things about doll specials is it takes away a blocker or an attacker, but this is better than attacking. It's dealing the point of damage, so you don't have to even worry about someone blocking. So you don't lose.
And you're killing a forward with it.
You don't lose the downside of having to not deal damage that turn. It still happens. And the only way for them to I killed someone on 6 damage this way, and the only way they could have got out of it is if they had pinged off their own forward somehow. So the first ability is actually really great. I run it with Chaos Walker, obviously, so then when they play their forward, it deals 9k to it, and then it dies. And I also run
that's a great combo. I hadn't considered that.
Yeah, and you run stuff like Pinello, the new Pinello, and or an Alhenalem, and you can finish things off if they come in at 10k or something. And this actually kills Fail Thanos, the Lightning Legend, because it doesn't target. It just says when a forward enters the field, deal it 2k, deal it 9k, and Fail Thanos specifically says choose when it's chosen. So a lot of people said, oh, what if they if you Chaos Walker someone and then they play Fail Thanos? Nope, this kills it too. So overall, I think it's a lot better than I thought it was. I think you do need to build around it or play it depending on the meta, but it's not something that you're just going to jam into a deck. But it's definitely it's better than I thought. I love it a lot. One note, there is another way to deal damage to your opponent on their turn, and that is with an old copy of Palom. He has a Comet special. And you have to use it. It's one Palom and dull him, and you have to control Porm to do it, and it deals your opponent a point of damage. So it's a lot harder to achieve than this because you have to have multiple forwards in the field. But technically, it's there.
I joined at the end of Opus 7, everyone. Forgive me. I don't remember every single card.
Okay, so next up we have Self, which is a 2 CP summon. It's EX Burst, choose one forward, deal it 3,000 damage, draw one card. So we have these summons in every element. And I actually just read the FAQ today, and that draw one card is all contingent on that forward being a legal target. So if that forward disappears or becomes untargetable, or something happens that makes it so you can't deal it 3,000 damage, then you won't draw a card. So that's kind of important. This is all these cards are kind of neat, and they're all build around cards, but I don't really think any of them are too relevant for constructed unless cycle becomes very important in your deck, because Wind already just has so many ways to ping that don't take up a card slot. They have Alhenalem to combo and stuff, so I don't think that this will be too important for Wind.
Another good Dr. Seuss character, similar to what I said about Shivan in Ice. Technically, text-wise, it's just fine, but deck space is limited. I don't see why you'd ever pick this.
Okay, so we've got another Onion Knight. Why don't you tell us about it?
Well, look who's back. Mr. Onion Knight of Wind. Onion Knight the Third, 1 cost, 2k CP forward. Or, sorry, 1 CP, 2k forward. Standard unit, if you control 4 or more backups, and if the backups you control are all of different elements, Onion Knight gains 6,000 power. Just like the Onion Knight we covered in Fire, it's literally the exact same card just for Wind, and I have the exact same opinion about it in that it's garbage, and it's way too difficult to get online. I would have rather had a 2-cost or 3-cost character that had a much easier condition to meet. There's just, I just don't see what place it. This is a card that, even in limited, sealed, I just don't see any game format where this fits. Do you?
I heard that in draft it can happen because you can really kind of go into it especially with some Dougals to help you color fix. But that's just what I've kind of heard on other podcasts and stuff. I don't really see it happening. It's certainly not the first thing I would go for in any sort of sealed, and I'm for sure not going to play it in constructed. So
Right.
maybe when we get to the other Onion Knights, we'll just kind of like put them on screen and just like throw them away.
Right.
Okay, next up is Chocobo. It's a 2 CP wind summon. It's a hero card, and some of the weirdest art you're going to see in this game.
You weren't kidding.
Yeah. So choose one forward you control, return it to your owner's hand, and draw one card. So this is a very, very build-around card because you're really putting yourself at a disadvantage. It replaces itself as a card in your hand, but you still lost that 2 CP that you used to play it, however you spent that. But returning a card to your hand forward to your hand might be really powerful, especially things like 3 CP Zidane, or even something like if you're just like flushed with CP, maybe like a Fina or something. It could be pretty neat, but it's definitely something that you're going to build around, and I'm just kind of worried that it's so specific. Like, at least with Mion, you get a backup that's on the field and that's producing CP for the rest of the game, but with this, there's CP lost that you really do need to make up. But I think it's a really good card if you're specifically building around it and playing it. You can almost think about it like a Renoa that doesn't give you a body, but not obviously. It's just not quite as good.
So I actually am quite a bit higher on this card than you are. That being said, I have to say, Amano, I love you, incredible artist. What am I looking at here? This thing looks nothing like a chocobo. It looks like a pterodactyl ostrich hybrid. It has no feathers on it. It's like bare skin. It kind of looks like it's farting a sand cloud. Like, I like the little people on it, but like, I don't know, man. Hey, I'm glad you push your creative side out there, but this does not look anything like a chocobo.
Well, and because it has those little people on it, that means that it's gigantic, right? Like this thing is huge.
Yeah, okay, so a couple of neat things about this card. Because it is card named Chocobo, if you are running a Chocobo deck that uses the Opus 9 Fat Chocobo, you can actually pull this card back to your hand with that, because that reveals the top 5 and if any card named Chocobo. So that's a neat little trick with it. Like you said, it's basically Mione on a summon, but again, another thing I like about that, and one thing I like about it in a Chocobo deck, and I play a lot of Chocobo decks, is it gives you some protection, because similar to Renoa or the Unai we talked about in Ice, you can like block with the Chocobo, throw Chocobo down, boom, bounce it back to your hand, and you just saved your summon. Plus you draw, so it always replaces itself. So I think this has application. Like, if you were to think about this for pure wind, yeah, I don't think it would see as much play because of everything you said, Alex. I think you covered that well. But in a Chocobo-based deck, one, it's thematic, and two, Chocobo's decks just really have no protection for themselves, especially if you're going really heavy on the Chocobo theme. So I think this could be a good, cheap way to give your cards a little bit of protection.
Yeah, and you know what? I honestly didn't think about it that much as a defensive summon, so you've raised my opinion of it. Well done,
yay.
Well done, sir.
Very good. Let's ride this thing off into the sunset and scream in terror.
Okay, sounds good to me. Okay, so what do we have next?
Nono. This is a 3-cost moogle backup named Nono. When a Category 12 forward enters your field, choose one backup you control. Activate it. I run the other version of Nono in my Chocobo deck, which is when a forward attacks, activate a backup, and that one is great. This one obviously was built for a 12 deck. I've heard some people even talk about that, like, if you were to do Tidal, that this might actually be banned in Tidal just because it seems so rigged for a 12 deck. In Constructed, I have to be honest, I'm just not familiar enough with the 12 characters. I believe most of, if not all, the Sky Pirates should be 12 characters, so this card seems like it was built for a Sky Pirates deck. But if you have the deck built around it, this card just seems fantastic. Like, every single thing you put down, you're gaining CP. So this card's going to pay for itself and then some so quickly. Also like the artwork. It's very adorable.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. You have to be running probably Sky Pirates because they are all 12s, and some of the cards that support them are all 12s as well. and there's a couple of pirate cards that are from other Final Fantasies, but basically it is a 12 deck, and I think that in the 12 deck that this is going to be good, and you can get value off of it pretty quickly. So I think it will see some play. I'm not. The 3 CP backup slot is really tough. So if you're running 12, I think you'll be fine. But otherwise, you won't see it anywhere. Okay, so next we have Barts. Barts is a 4 CP backup EX burst. When Barts enters the field, activate all characters you control. He's a job wanderer, and he is falling down in this artwork. This was actually revealed by the world champ Alex Hancock's, and which was pretty neat. He also picked a Barts for his promo card that he got for winning the world championship, and it's kind of funny. I thought that they keep giving him Barts, which is the nemesis of his favorite character, which is X-Death. So anyway, this card is really, really great when you have lots of characters out. It's kind of like the 3 CP Aerith in that it can pay for itself, but you need a little bit more backups out to make it a free backup. But even if you have 2 backups out and then this becomes a kind of like that pseudo 2 CP, then that's pretty neat. But then this is also activating monsters and forwards, and that is just really good. This is going to be an absolute killer EX burst to hit, and it activates all characters, not all wind characters, which is just such an important piece of text. So I think that this is going to be heavily experimented with, and the biggest factor in determining whether it's going to be playable is how often is it dead because you just haven't set up enough for it to be efficient. But I think that the EX burst more than makes up for that, and maybe we'll even see this in some sort of Ice Wind Cloud of Darkness deck, because it's going to help you kind of keep your forwards, all of your characters activated, so you can use Cloud of Darkness's ability more.
So if you're playing this from hand, ideally you want it to be your 5th backup, so you can get all your backups back. When I first saw this card, I thought, I don't see why anyone would ever play this over the forward Barts. For 1 more CP, you get a huge 9k body. It's also an EX burst, and it also activates all your characters. So when I first saw it, I was like, well, why would you? But one important thing about this card that I didn't even realize when I first did it, it activates all the characters. That includes himself, because he's a backup, you can actually tap him for CP the turn he comes in, because he'll come in dull, activate everything, including himself, and then you can tap Barts for CP. So again, if he's that magical 5th backup, you play your 4, put him down, you technically gained a CP that turn, because not only will you have your 4 back, you'll now have a 5th one you can use. So for that instance alone, that's very cool. Still hard to see people picking this over the forward one, because he's just so strong. But especially in pre-release or draft or sealed, I could definitely see this one being very strong.
Yeah, and in any Wind X deck, because again, the forward one's just wind characters. So in mono wind, the forward one is probably going to see more play, and then in any sort of deck that has 2 elements and wind, this one would see play over the forward one anyway. So I'm sure it's going to be around. Okay, how about we've got another copy of a card that is going to be hard to play just because of its name.
So this is a card I pulled a foil full art of, which is very pretty. And I know I need to hold on to it because Cody Snodgrass wants to take it from me. So I'll have to see if I want to give it to it, trade it to him, or if I'll just hold it for my collection. Anyway, this is Pinello, 2-cost backup, Dancer. She has 1 ability, which is only live at damage 3. If you're at damage 3, you can tap Pinello, deal 1,000 damage to all the forwards opponent controls. This card actually won me a match in my pre-release. It was the last 1,000 damage I needed to finish off someone's Black Tortoise Gilgamesh, so that felt very good. Love the artwork. She looks beautiful, and man, does the foil full art shiny look good. That being said, I don't know. This card kind of seems underwhelming. Am I crazy? The other Pinello searches, which especially if you're playing Pie Skyrates, which is what I almost said, Sky Pirates, you want to pull out those other Sky Pirates. And because Penelo herself is a dancer, it's not like her being on the field will just give you that instant Sky Pirate value. And I just find it so odd that you have to be at 3 damage before she can even use her effect. Yeah, she's 2 CP, so she's cheap, but I know other dancers in the game exist, but I guess they have to tap for themselves and a CP. But I don't know, like, I like the art, but am I crazy? This card underwhelms me.
This is actually one of my sneaky favorite cards in the set.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, do tell.
So I think it's amazing. So we already had Dancer. I guess we had 2 versions of it that was the exact same ability, but you can use it anytime, but on 3 CP. So obviously that's a big CP investment. And this one is very easy to play. But then you get the ability at 3 damage. I think that it's a really, really strong ability, and Dancer saw a lot of play in Wind Lightning, and it also just saw a lot of play early on because adding on 1,000 damage to make your forwards trade up was really important in Wind, because Wind traditionally has had very weak forwards. Barts was one of the only strong forwards Wind used to have. Now it's a little bit different now, but like back in the day, like Wind had the toughest time getting strong forwards, and Barts was like the only beater they had. So I'm playing this in my Wind Lightning deck, and it is phenomenal for activating all the synergy in that deck, all of the damage and break damaged forwards, and anything. The damage 3 comes online so quickly for me that it's well worth the investment to just play it, and then later on it's going to be really relevant. And it's also very important in that deck, specifically for Sid, Brave Exvius, that I can use it to go up to 10k with his, if I Chaos Walker somebody and they play like Yasmat, and it deals 9k to it, then Penelo finishes it off. So in the scenarios that I'm describing, I'm playing this in a deck that is very much specifically wanting it, and also wanting it not to cost 3 because it needs to keep as much tempo and value as possible, because it's a fast deck, and because this costs 2, that makes the entire world of difference for the deck that I'm playing it in. So I think that in where it's supposed to be, which isn't a Sky Pirate deck, it's not a 12 deck, it's a Wind Lightning deck, or a deck that wants to deal ping damage, I think that this card is incredible, and for that reason, it doesn't actually name clash at all, because it doesn't belong in the decks that the other Penelo belongs in.
Well said, sir. That was very sound reasoning.
Okay.
Very well done.
Cool, thanks. Okay, so next up we have Filo, or Filo Pastry, as I call him or her. I don't even know. I don't know this character, and I'm having a hard time.
Hang 10, dude. Woo!
Yeah, exactly. So 2 CP Wind forward Sky Pirate, 5k power. If you control another job Sky Pirate forward other than Filo, Filo gains 1,000 power and haste. This is great in Sky Pirates, and it's a nice little finisher, cheap forward, and would work well with that Shemazai, or what's the monster called again? Spicillion, the lizard.
Yeah.
Would be good with this card. I think it's just a neat addition to Sky Pirates, and you're going to run at least 2 of them just to get that haste out. And again, it's so important to have Sky Pirates with different names now that you just have to run it in Sky Pirates. But it seems fine.
Haste is always dangerous, and I'll confess, this card wrecked me in pre-release. So again, that guy was running the Sky Pirate thing, and it just came down 6k haste. I was like, whoa, I wasn't ready for that. So yeah, solid card.
Okay, let's talk about our next legend.
This is, sadly, this is the only legend I didn't pull out of my 2 boxes. I got at least one of every other one, but Fran eluded me. Curses. Good art. This is Fran, 2 CP, 5k forward. Job Sky Pirate, of course. She has 3 effects. If you control a card named Balthier, forward, Fran cannot be chosen by your opponent's summons or abilities. For each job Sky Pirate other than Fran you control, Fran gains 1,000 power. Finally, when Fran attacks, choose one forward opponent controls. Deal it 1,000 damage for each job Sky Pirate other than Fran you control. On its base stat line, this card is incredible. It obviously works so well in Sky Pirates. I love that it has the tribal kind of Scion feel to it that other than the Balthier forward, it's just job Sky Pirate. So if they're on your backups, they're still boosting her, which is great. So I kind of get a bit of an Eda feel from her in the sense that you can drop her and she'll be however strong based on the total you have. And the fact that she deals 1,000 damage just for attacking seems really nice. She can obviously be boosted to however high you can get with the Sky Pirates. And then if you've got Balthier, she's just protected that much more. And all that for 2 CP. She's great. Similar to the Rain Legend from Fire. This one is very category-based. If you're not running Sky Pirates, this card's kind of useless to you, but very cool legend.
I think this legend's good. I'm really on the fence about it because I don't know how relevant the ping is or not. Because in Sky Pirates you don't actually have that much ping unless you start to build around it, but then you have to cram your deck with so many Sky Pirates. So how many Sky Pirates can you reliably have out on the field? Maybe 3 to 5, because you're going to have one backup in Tomage, and then Fran, you always have 2K right off the bat. And then maybe you have 1 to 2 others and you're going to 3 or 4K. So what is that 4K doing? Are you running a Barbarisha? Are you comboing with Diabolos? Or maybe it's you swing with Filo and your opponent's never going to block because they know that if they block Filo, then Fran will swing in and ping off the 4 they blocked with on attack. So that's where I think maybe that's going to help you push in an aggressive Sky Pirates build, but I think there's a lot to be gained from the backup Fran and Sky Pirates to have more searchable Sky Pirates off Pinello that are backups, to have more job name Sky Pirates that are consistent for things like the starter Vaughn can become a 2 CP forward when you play him and you have 2 Sky Pirate backups. So I'm kind of underwhelmed by the final ability that she has. I think the first 2 abilities are really, really, really good. And I think that this is a card that once I play it or I play against it, I will totally reevaluate it. But right now, I'm having such a hard time envisioning it. I just can't.
Full confession, I'm not super duper familiar with Sky Pirates, but at least the little I saw at pre-release, they do kind of swing in with Philo and Rickon and like these other kind of smaller forwards. So to me, that's what that ping is for, is that, like you said, go ahead, block Philo, because then Fran's just going to finish you off by attacking. But again, I'm not super familiar with Sky Pirates. However, one thing you mentioned that I actually hadn't thought of is that it does name clash with the backup Fran, which is very good. So that is kind of unfortunate.
Yeah. Oh, man, that backup Fran in Sky Pirates, you play it for 1 CP. When you're Balthier out, you search it with Pinello, you get a nice little chain there. And then it also pings on entry and it pings on exit, so it can do the things that this Fran can do as well. So I don't know. We'll just have to see how it plays out with this one, because it's certainly got enough stuff to be good.
Right.
But I'm just not convinced yet. Okay, next we have Class 8th Moogle. This is a 2 CP backup. When Class 8th Moogle is on the field, it can produce Earth CP. So this is rounding out that class of Dougals that are color fixers, and it's kind of funny because they're all in, for the most part, like defined archetypes that already existed. And if you're playing things like before we had Ice Fire and like Water Fire, and this is Earth Wind, like these are all decks that already exist, and they're decks that are so evenly split that they don't actually need color fixing. So what this is for splashing colors, or for decks that it's really important that you have more of one element backup, and it still allows you to get that Earth CP, which can be really important because when you splash a color, you don't want to have to pitch a really important, let's say in this case, you don't want to pitch, let's say a Noctis to play your 2 CP Earth backup, because you're in this situation where you run 10 Earth cards and you think, okay, well, I have to play this backup because it color fixes me now, and there's no guarantee. If I use this Earth backup to play this Noctis, I may never get color fixed. And I'm leaving it up to the luck of my deck. But with this card, you can play it with your 40 wind cards. You can always play this backup easily, and you're color fixing. So I think that's like the key about these moogles, is that they allow you to protect your splash cards from discard and keep them in hand to be played, which is why I often play 3 of these moogles in any given deck that I'm trying to color fix in, unless I have chaos or something else here.
Right.
Yeah.
Great analysis. This was my pre-release MVP. I got 3 of them, so I was like, all right, I'm running Earthwind.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. Okay, and then we've got another moogle that we've seen a bit of already.
2 CP backup, class 12th moogle. You can pay 1 of any color and tap the moogle. Choose 1 wind forward you control. It gains 1,000 power until the end of the turn. This is just a wind version of, I believe every element has one of these now. As I've said about the one in, I think it was fire, I've never seen anyone use these. I don't think anyone's going to use these. There's just so many good backups out there. I just don't think you're going to slot him in. However, he is wearing like an adorable little bonnet, and I like that.
Yeah, I showed this one to my wife, and she thought it was cute.
Nice.
Okay, next up we have Y'shtola, Tragic Name Clash. So put Y'shtola to the break zone, choose 1 summon or ability, choosing a backup you control, cancel its effect, and draw 1 card. This is a 2 CP backup as well. So this is backup protection. This is very, very important if you are running your Une or Doga strategy, because they're going to blow up your backups. So this is absolutely vital in those decks, and possibly even in a wind water where you want to protect a 5 CP Una, or any meta where like your backup is so vital that someone's trying to blow it up, because the value you get off of this, I think, is really strong. The only problem is that you're never going to run it because it's named Y'shtola, and the forward Y'shtola can just cancel the majority of things that are breaking your backups anyway. Or I think it can cancel anything except for Archer and I guess now Ranger.
Yeah, it can't cancel action abilities, but
so I don't know. I think this is just a fun card, but again, yeah, the name clash, no way.
I think you said it all. For those of you out there who are trying to play this card, no cheating. I saw a guy on a stream play this, and I guess he thought it was like forward Y'shtola on a backup, because the guy tried to like use a summon against his forward. He's like, oh, I'll cancel that with Y'shtola. And I was like at the screen, like, no, that's not how it works. And luckily the other guy was like, wait, can I read that? And he's like, hey, that's not how this works.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's specifically if it's targeting one of your backups, which, see, to me, cards like this, it would be so, one, like you said, I don't think you're going to play this because of forward Y'shtola, but it's just so hit and miss because against certain decks, this card would be great because they're going to have so much backup hate. But against a lot of decks, they don't have anything that's ever going to mess with your backup, so it's never going to do anything. So,
one thing I should mention, it is a job sign of the 7th Dawn, which has some utility when you get an important job on a backup. That in itself can always have the same thing with like categories. When you get certain category backups, that is always something not to be counted out. If there was a control a number of scions effect or control a category something effect, then that's always important. But on this card, the name clash is too much.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to talk about the first starter card?
Yeah, ooh, so you thought you knew Vaughn before? Nah, that's 2 CP Vaughn. Let me introduce you to my buddy. This is 6 CP Vaughn. 6 CP, 8k forward, one of the neatest effects that we already saw kind of go nuts at Nationals. When Vaughn enters the field, reveal the top 5 cards of your deck. Play 1 forward of cost 3 or less among them onto the field. Then shuffle the other cards revealed and return them to the bottom of your deck. If you have received 5 points of damage or more, perform this action twice. Isn't that crazy? I mean, wow, yeah. So, I mean, this is good even when you're not at 5 damage. But if you're at 5 damage, like, I've seen a lot of this card get a lot of play. And it's just kind of nutty how quickly the board can turn that, like, well, no, he doesn't even have any forwards out. What the heck? I'm staring at 4 forwards and what, like, this card. And when it's very easy to build around this card, too, because, like you said, there's just so many good 3-cost forwards. So I've rarely seen – the only time I saw this card whiff was when I played it for the first time, and I missed completely and felt like a jackass. But, yeah, this card is great. its effect goes off. I did see someone on a stream once Ishtola this guy, and so because of the way it's worded, it's not two separate effects. It just canceled the whole thing. So that was brutal. But this card is really good, and I expect to see it a lot at Worlds and going forward.
Yeah, this card is insane. I don't think it name clashes too hard with anything as well, even though we have tons of Vaughns. I actually run 2 of these and 2 of the 2 CP Vaughns in my Sky Pirates build, and that hasn't been an issue at all. So in that Sky Pirates build, you run so many 3 CPs or less, you can play this and then pay 2 CP and play back kites as well. And then if you're just running it in any regular deck, you do have to pack a lot of 3 CPs in there. You really don't want to miss on it. That's quite bad, but you often don't, and it's insane value. It feels so bad when you're pummeling someone and you get them 5 damage, and you really are like ahead, and they play this and just totally come back on board.
Yeah.
It's pretty discouraging. But I think it's overall it's a fair card. So it's just a fun card, and it's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, last card we're going to talk about is Kane from the Onion Knight vs. Wraith starter deck. This is a 3 CP forward, 5k power, haste. Kane doesn't receive damage except for battle damage, and he has a special, Gungnir. It's just his own discard 1 Kane, and until the end of the turn, Kane gains 5,000 power and first strike. He's also a job Holy Dragoon, and Holy... Is that a frustrating thing that they did that? I almost swore because he's a Dragoon, and they ruined everyone's lives when they printed this. But putting all of that aside, it's a really good card. It's seeing play because that battle damage thing is really relevant. It's something that has haste, so that means that you can often play it when your opponent doesn't have a blocking forward, and you can get damage in, and then it's pretty much safe against half the removal in the game because any damage-based removal doesn't kill it. So it's actually really tricky, and because it's special, so cheap, it's constantly faking you out to make you think, do they have a Kane? Although I've only really seen this in mono wind, so they probably don't have a Kane because you're only going to be running the 2 to 3 of them. But it would be devastating if they did. And you can't exactly like interrupt and say, okay, use the special, well, I'm going to respond and ping him, because he doesn't take that damage. He only takes the damage from blocking. So I think a 3 CP haster is just a really good card, and to have these abilities on it makes it super worthy.
I feel your pain about the Holy Dragoon aspect because it is unfortunate he isn't fitting with the Dragoon stuff. That being said, I really like this artwork, and in particular, it's nice to see Kane in his Holy Armor.
Yes.
Whereas normally you always see the dark Dragoon versions of Kane. So I do appreciate that, something different. At first, when I saw this card, I didn't really rate it very highly because he just seems so weak. Even though, he can't be pinged, but I was like, but 5k, like, that's not very much. Like, a 6k blocker, okay, just block him and then he dies because he dies in battle. But apparently it's actually quite useful, again, against certain decks like the fire control deck, which is all ping damage. Like, this guy just destroys that deck because it doesn't matter, they can't ping him at all. And like you said, because Gungnir is just such a easy threat that's like, I can beat you in battle. An important thing to note about this too, and I asked this because I was wondering, this even protects him from Earth summons like Hecaton Shear and Titan, whereas I thought, well, wait, no, but those summons are making the forwards fight, but apparently that doesn't actually count as battle damage. That's just summon damage or whatever they consider. That's
forwards damaging each other, but battle damage specifically is when they are battling in a combat phase, and
has to be attacking and blocking.
That is actually such an important note to bring up.
So I've seen him be very effective. Like I said, that the fact that he doesn't receive any battle damage. You mentioned the Shantoto thing earlier, where he's immune to that. So he's a very, very slippery card, and he's got a lot of tricksiness to him. He's cool. I like him.
Yeah, he's a tricky little boy. So that's gonna be it for Wind. And next up is going to be Earth. So you're all in for a treat. That's my favorite element. And it's going to be so important that we have Travis here because I'm such a homer for Earth. I'm going to be rating all these cards like, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 12 out of 10. And you're going to be like, okay, let's come down a little bit and really evaluate these cards. So that would be pretty important.
Awesome. Overall thoughts on Wind? It seems pretty fun.
Yeah, we should mention that.
You got some good cards I'm really excited about. Like I said, I think both the legends are good, especially Sid Brevia is really exciting. So, yeah, I thought they did a pretty good job with Wind. And it feels sometimes Wind just gets like so much power. And I also didn't feel like it got anything ridiculous this set, which I appreciate.
I don't think that last set's mono Wind deck necessarily even changes. It has the option to put things like Kane, Vaughn, and Sid in, and maybe even something like Chocobo. But I think that it's a really nice place to be, where Wind can still get strong cards and encourage other archetypes and playstyles. But it's also not just like straight powering up the previous meta deck, and that deck is still going to be fine to play because it just has so much value. So I think that they did a really great job with Wind this set.
Agreed.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to sign off. My name is Alex Scott.
I'm Travis Pfeifer.
And we'll see you next time.
Toodaloo!
Thank you so much for watching. You can like and subscribe to support us further, and you can read the Mysidia Post articles at themysidiapost.com. You can also check out our Patreon if you want to support us more. And if you need FFTCG singles, then look no further than Cards That You Release. They've got great deals and prices. Check them out. Finally, I'd like to thank FFDecks for creating the best website for creating your Final Fantasy trading card game decks. They've also got a Patreon, so make sure you go check them out. They work so hard for the community, so let's pay them back. See you next time.